Right.
Mr. McKim, Maurice says it's working.
We're ready to go?
Yes, sir.
We were in the stormwater discussion, I believe.
Yeah, this is
So-
perfect for the stormwater, and then I'll get to the other question. So stormwater there's a large stormwater facility here and another large storm facility here. This is still showing, it looks like it's still showing the house down there. So anyways, access to the stormwater facility for maintenance, it's a private stormwater facility, but there will be public, town will have access through an easement through here, and it's down through here. This is the Lowe's, to answer the other question, this is the Lowe's up here. McKnight Road is right here. This is the road this is the road, there'll be a sidewalk along this road, just in case that wasn't reported. And that sidewalk, in the plans that we saw, does not show the connecting piece here, but the sidewalk will be part of this plan. Sidewalk continues then through here and then continues down this road. So the people along this road will have access to get to the front door of the building. There are emergency egresses throughout the area. While this is a non-combustible sprinkler building, it will be designed in such a way that it'll be a shelter in place will be the first rule. But there are emergency exits that go into the courtyard, and in the courtyard itself, while being fenced in, we'll have emergency egress from the courtyard.
You did say sprinkled building,
Yes. Yes, sir.
fully sprinkled.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
How close is that building to McKnight Road?
What are we, to the actual pavement itself? Do you remember what that was?
50.
I think it's a little bit less than that.
Yeah.
But
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
It's probably approximately in between 40 and 50,
I'd say
I
it's
would
between,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it will be,
Within the setback, the appropriate setback.
yeah, there's also a right-of-way that they have to be off the right-of-way and then further back from the right-of-way. I think we have
The right away behind the building.
right-of-way off of McKnight Road. Okay, so we talked about the sidewalks, the lighting, the buffer zones.
Where's the standpipe?
The emergency, or the fire department access will be about right here, and the fire hydrant will be in a very close proximity to that. But this will be the Dawn Roseman, that'll be about right here, by that little
Yep.
cutout.
Our fire sprinkler room would be right there in front. We'd have a connection at that point, and as well as a fire hydrant.
Have you done any special precautions to insulate that so it's kind of quiet? That's really right on McKnight and
Sure.
can be very confusing for elderly people to have that constant noise.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have almost this identical scenario in building in a building in St. Louis. So that's a project that is fully built. We have about 60 residents living there now, and we have kind of stress tested that to make sure that the highway being so close in it, that highway in particular gets 250,000 cars a day, and it's unnoticeable. So it's a non-combustible building. You have a thick, rigid insulation on the outside, as well as an insulated wall, as well as the hardy board and stone. So you have a lot of layers. And then we beef up the windows as well with an STC, sound transmission rating. So, yeah, we definitely pay attention to that because it's the last thing we want is a loud highway right next to someone's bedroom.
I also have a question about security.
Absolutely.
We hear the
That's
horror
gonna be my next
stories about
question.
people
Yep.
getting out and lost and cold, and we don't want that to happen here.
We do a few things, and that is the number one risk in a senior community is elopements and things of that nature. So we do a number of things. We do delayed egress at all of the doors that leave the building, with exception to the front door. That one's monitored by an attendant. So any door that is, someone tries to get out of, it's going to audible alert. But we also use a system called Syscore. It's a nurse call system. Any door that someone tries to get through, it automatically sends a signal, an alert to our care staff that says, hey, door number 20, someone's trying to get through it that is a resident. you need to go check it out immediately. In addition to that, if there is a resident that, may have a want to try to get out, and in the middle of the night, we can monitor those folks with a wander guard bracelet. That we can keep extra precautionary care to make sure that doesn't happen.
And these monitors that the nurses see, is that something they carry on them? So
Yep.
that they're, okay, so it's not at a station somewhere away?
It's both. It's at a station, but all of our nurses have it's basically an iPad, an iPhone, the smaller device. And that's exactly how they know if, say, someone in their bathroom needs help, they know exactly where to go. And at the same token, if there's a door that is pushed that doesn't need to be pushed, they'll know exactly where to go.
Now, let's
So it's a
say,
very advanced system because of that reason.
okay, if we're looking at it negatively, I mean, being the devil's advocate, if someone gets out of there, I don't mean it to sound like it's
Yeah.
prison, but is there something that would prevent them from getting onto McKnight Road?
Well,
I mean-
there's nothing that would ever completely stop that, but you do have, you got your guardrail, you got your small railing up against the highway. We, like I said, we do have this exact scenario in one of our St. Louis communities on a very busy highway. And, while it is a concern, it just makes it, that much of a concern on our part, to make sure that it doesn't happen.
And if anyone gets out, then it's the responsibility of our police department. That's who you call, or
Yeah, we would immediately.
I didn't know if you had your own search
We do,
people.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It'd be a top priority to find, that resident and make sure get them to safety.
Dawn, do you remember, I'm asking the architect, Dawn Roseman, were there any emergency exits that go out toward McKnight Road?
In the original concept we had, we discussed, there were exits that were at the northeast corner, and we've moved that to where that exit is now on the courtyard side. So it's on the interior courtyard side. So two things that I want to point out that Jed mentioned, it was the delayed egress. So it's an electronic control, so if there's an emergency, if you went to the door here, you have full free access to immediately go out. Well, with the delayed egress, which is prescribed by the state, I hit the door and I want to go out, but I can't immediately, that door will not automatically release. It will be delayed to open, which allows the staff to have that time to get there to have knowledge and be able to approach it. The second thing is that the memory care wing, which is where most of the potential elopement occurs, and that's what you read about a lot of times when you hear it. In our particular building, that is located on the upper level. So those residents have a much greater control that will prevent them from getting to a front door that may wander out in other facilities within the community that you may have had or read or heard about. So we've reduced that possibility of that person ever having that procedure to try to get out. But all of them now focus in so that if a resident has a need and they want to use an exit stairways, it all focuses away from McKnight and in towards our courtyard.
And as I said earlier, the system that Jed was talking about also will apply to the fenced-in area in the courtyard. That same monitor will be on the emergency
Correct.
exits within the courtyard. So step one is if they go out an emergency exit. Step two would be if they try to get out of the courtyard. Although I believe we have one exit down around here
Yeah, opens.
that will not go into the courtyard.
It will.
Does that one go into
It
the
does.
courtyard too?
Well, it
Okay.
does.
One thing to note too is part of since we are a licensed community personal care home, this plan, our ability to protect our residents will come under heavy critique from a personal care home and the licensure within the state of Pennsylvania. And we're very familiar with that on every state level that we've worked in. We pay a lot of attention to that because when it comes time to open our building and open our community, that's the number one thing that they're going to come there and look at. So, we have special meetings, work sessions with the folks at the state, just so we can make sure we get that right.
One more safety question. If everybody needs to get out,
Uh-huh.
is there some way that all the doors open so people can get out?
Yep. Fire alarm, everything releases. That's just a life safety requirement. Yep.
Do the landscaping along the way,
Absolutely. So, as Bruce mentioned, under today's plan, this is landscaped per the ordinance requirements. So this buffer area along McKnight is what he mentioned was landscaped very heavily and might overgrow and actually kill off, nearby plants because it was planted too heavily. But as the plan shows today, that is per ordinance.
And that's where you talked to me, Bruce, about thinning that a bit, so that there's no, the plants don't grow into each other.
Right.
And they can plant additional foliage along the back.
Yeah, wherever you like.
Yes. Yeah, and this is pretty well, aside from the wetlands, there are a lot of plants through there anyways, but this will help decorate the slopes.
The other thing that we've done, in common places is to deposit those into a tree fund and, you can plant them wherever you like across the town.
Be good if they're here.
And in this site here, we're also talking about doing the same thing. They have the same buffer zone.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jed and Dawn.
Thank you.
Item number 3, review the simple subdivision application of North Point Development for McCandless Crossing Plan Number 9, which is to contain Stonecrest of Pittsburgh, located in McCandless Crossing West on the eastern side of Duncan Avenue, located adjacent to LA Fitness and between CA Ventures McCandless Senior Living Facility and McKnight Road. This is obviously a follow-on to the item number 2. And go ahead, Bruce.
Pretty much, all that's doing is creating this line. This is all one parcel, actually extends out, and just creating this line to separate these two. We will need the cross easements for this. Bob just gave me the sanitary cross easement. We're going to need, and we're also going to need an easement for access to the storm water facility, should the town be required to get into that.
Yep.
Bob McGarkey has a comment on that.
Yeah, Bruce, Justin Hoffman with Mars.
Up to the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not amplifying, but it's just so
Yeah, Bob
it's-
McGurk.
it gets recorded.
Our attorney was on vacation last week. He is drafting the REA right now, the real estate agreement, and we should have that to council or to the town administration by this Friday for review. That will include the shared access, the shared utility easements, along with the responsibility for snow removal on the service road, snow removal of the sidewalk from Duncan Avenue to the site, and any other items which are shared among the two parcels. That'll get recorded among the land records prior to closing, so we're all subject to it. And that will be a sub-REA. We have a master REA, if you remember, for the entire west side, which everybody shares in the cost of the snow removal of the Duncan Avenue sidewalk from McKnight Road all the way back to the home 2 suites, along with the maintenance of the stormwater ponds and the landscaping, the cutting of grass along the berm of the road along Duncan Avenue all the way back, and the maintenance of the berm along McKnight Road.
Okay, so I just wanted to point that out, that we haven't received that yet, and but we know it'll be taken care of.
Okay,
Good for that.
thank you. Item number 4.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
No, we have no questions at this point, ma'am. We do at the end.
All right,
That's our protocol. There'll be time at the end of
all right, thank you.
this. You're welcome. Notification number 4. Notification that a public hearing is scheduled for July 17th, 2017 for the conditional use application of Richard Gettle, Inc., for a geotechnical engineering and construction company to allow equipment storage on property located at 8443 Perry Highway. This property is located between Gloria Street and West Fairview Avenue north of the Howard Hanna Real Estate Office. Okay.
So with regard to this, I just wanted to point out to everybody that's watching this today and to the new council people who haven't had to deal with this or haven't dealt with a conditional use. This is a conditional use, and a conditional use is a permitted use. However, council saw fit, because it is a special type of use, to add additional conditions. This is the one time the council acts as a quasi-judicial body. They would be acting similar to a zoning hearing board. If this was a zoning hearing board action, it would be a special exception. However, in this case, council acts in that role. If this is approved, the next step would be a complete site plan. We have a lot of conditions that go into that, and they will all be presented at the public hearing on July 17th.
8443.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on council? And if not, we will then proceed to the number 5, which is the presentation on the implementable comprehensive plan proposal prepared by James W. Pashek, RLA, lead GA, principal architect and founding partner of Pashek-MTR. Mr. Pash,
You guys gonna switch places or what?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. After saying.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Jim Pashek, and I represent Pashek plus MTR. We used to be Pashek Associates for many years, but in January we merged with a second firm named MTR, so we're now Pashek plus MTR. So when we do planning, we think of a planning process, and I'm always talking process here, and you'll see why I say that, is it should be engaging. We should be engaging the community. It should be very focused. It's important that we have focused planning, and it should be helpful. In the end, we need to improve the community, and that's what we're doing with planning. And I've added a fourth one, which is that ought to be a little fun. We've got very serious business here, so this process will build in some fun in the way we facilitate public meetings, the way we have workshops and everything. I think people who have gone through this process have really enjoyed and learned a lot from the way we do these kinds of things. So it won't be me standing up lecturing, but everybody engaged in this process. What I'd like to do is take you through a few quick slides related to what an implementable comprehensive plan is, and then talk a little bit about the specifics related to this proposal. I think it's important to talk about these concepts because that really is the underlayment for what we're proposing to do here in McCandless. I know Denny Pucco was here and talked to you, I think, in February. So I may be repeating a little of this, but it's really important to me that you understand why we're doing what we're doing. So on the left is what a traditional comprehensive plan in Pennsylvania includes a number of elements that you can see on there. DCD started to realize that an awful lot of the plans they funded close to $20 million worth of planning studies over the last 15 years. They were finding that a lot of the plans weren't even being adopted. And even if they were adopted, there was a box full of plans that was in the manager's closet. And they were saying, why is this? What's going on? Why are we spending all this money on planning and it's not really changing communities for the better? And that's the thing we're trying to talk about, is improving communities as opposed to creating a plan. So this is going to be a real paradigm shift in the way we do planning. Instead of the end result is a book, which is kind of the goal in many old plans. Now we're talking about a process that will result in positive change in the communities. And when we looked at DCD and our firm started to look at things that we saw as common things to make good planning processes, we identified 5 things, and these became the keys of an implementable plan. Go ahead, please. So I'll go through these first. So the idea is that we're solving problems and enhancing opportunities. We're not producing a report. That's a key difference. We're setting up a process that will go on for years, but we'll make positive changes. So our goal is to change the community in a positive way. So key 1 is focus the plan on relevant issues. I don't know anybody who goes into the Giant Eagle here would come up and talk about, well, talk to me about your transportation overlay system. No, residents talk about problems they're experiencing in the community. And so why can't our planning, instead of talking about economic development or housing, transportation, or anything, demographics, 40 pages of demographics, why can't we talk about real problems in the community and then let's solve them? Let's have a plan that solves those problems. And so that's what we talk about on Key 1. And we do that a lot of ways. And some people say, well, how do we come up with these key issues? And the important thing that we have is there has to be a multi-layered approach. We can't rely on just a public meeting. We can't rely on just a survey. We can't rely on just focus groups. The important is to integrate all those different ways of getting and engaging the community so that we have a really good understanding of what the key issues are in the community. And that's what we would propose for this project. Please. And so we do all kinds of things. This is an example where we developed a website, we printed t-shirts for our steering committee, and we met at community days, and we had a booth set up, and we talked to the community on community day about what their problems were and what kind of things we could be solving. So P2 is to organize our plan, not in terms of transportation, economic development, housing, community facilities, and the traditional things, but organize the plan with your issues. And this is not necessarily your issues as a dummy for this presentation, but we might want to talk about a plan that has active transportation or communication strategies or something. So what we want to do is identify those key issues, and then that plan, each chapter of our plan will be one of those key issues. It really makes some sense and people understand that. Third key is that we need to do some prioritization. We need to have practical and workable solutions. Most people will do the old red dot thing where everybody gets to put a red dot on the chart. That prioritizes things, and it's really important to understand from a priority perspective what are the most important issues. We might have 40 or 50 or 60 key issues that the community wants to do, but we need to focus that down onto a few key issues. But we add an overlay by trying to look in terms of what are some of the things, how can it be accomplished. So the example I talk about is in the Zealand, Oakville, and Harmony plan, the number one issue was a bypass. And the reason why they wanted a bypass was to get the trucks that were shooting from Beaver County up to the Interstate 79, going right through downtown. That was the number one issue. So if we stop there, we would be looking at a bypass in our comprehensive plan. But the reality of building a bypass in this economic times is slim or none, but probably closer to none. And so we talked about that with the community and said, even though this is the number one issue, we need to be realistic. And so our plan evolved to some things that were more likely to happen. We did not lose the fact that that was an important issue, and we talked about strategies to begin that process. It might be a 20 or a 30, how to get it on the tip, do all the kinds of things that need to be done. But the plan didn't focus on that because it was such a long-range process. So we do prioritizations, and we also look at what it is to accomplish that. So the next issue is related to details. We can have wonderful ideas, but unless we have great details on how to accomplish things, we're not going to be successful for that. So here's an example of that, looking at that. This is Pine. They talked about wanting to do some connections between the high school to the community park and eventually to North Park. So that was a major issue, was this whole issue of connecting the community together with major assets. And so what we did was we developed some strategies with our committee as to where those connections would occur. Then we went and field worked them. We estimated the costs for those kinds of things. We developed an estimate for some boardwalks where we had to do boardwalks. And we came up with a very specific strategy. That's the level of detail that a good plan, an implementable plan, needs to go down. So the old plans would say, you'd like to do a trail plan, why don't you hire a consultant to do a trail plan as a follow-up? And what we're trying to say is the implementable plans is we want to take that step. We want to take that time and actually help you figure out how you can do this so that then Pine can just take that information out of the plan and submit it to DCNR for grant. They don't need to hire a consultant to go to the next step. And that's what we see as providing the detail, please. Another community said we're really concerned about sustainability and our parks just really weren't meeting that, so they asked us to use some photo simulations to help us understand what that is. Go that. So we talked about infiltration swales and rain gardens and how we can be more responsible in terms of stormwater, which is a big issue today, I think, but also some beauty and how we could be more sustainable. And this was the story we could tell to the community. Next one. Here's an example of a buffer yard. And again, the question is, we don't understand what a buffer yard ordinance is. And so we talked about the residences next to a commercial zone district and how that buffer yard might be able to do this. So we developed this photo simulation for the community to understand, because these are communication tools. Of course, then Bruce immediately told me that we had a non-native species illustrated there, so now we have to go back and change that. So thanks.
What is that?
They're spruces.
Oh,
Go ahead.
fairly common.
Key 4. So even if we have a plan that is derived from the community, even if we have a plan that is very specific and works on things that are realistic and we need to do more. We have to recruit partners and create capacity. And that's why that whole public process in the beginning is so important. It's really important that we get the community involved, because we want them to be cheerleaders in moving forward in terms of creating capacity and implementing this plan. And the last key is we need to get local ownership of the plan. We need to get commitment to implement. The ultimate dream of Danny Pucco and mine is that the plan is a successful plan if this town council would have that comprehensive plan sitting next to you in the fall when you're doing budget deliberations. And that you would decide as part of your budget deliberations, well, these are the key issues that the community wants. The community said, this is what we want, so we need to allocate the resources, whether that's staff or finances, to deal with what the community wants. So that's the big win for us as a planner, is if the town council adopts that and uses that as a tool in their budget deliberations. So I went through that very quickly, and I apologize, but I know you've heard that already. Let's go to the next one. So in the RFP, you asked us to divide our planning process up into 2 phases. The first phase is understanding your community needs. We're going to meet with a steering committee about 6 times, whatever it takes, whatever we need, to work with them. We prepare a quality of life questionnaire, which we will mail and put on a SurveyMonkey, because it's important for people who won't come to meetings to be able to give their input. I think down in Peters we had 1,600 responses just on the digital questionnaire. Really good response. People were concerned. We're going to conduct lots of interviews with stakeholders, review past studies that have been done, because we don't need to recreate the wheel. Facilitate public meetings, as many as we need to get going on that. I think we've estimated 3 in this first phase. Update town council, because you need to be aware of what's going on before we even have the public meetings. We want you to be part of this, and you have an important say in what we're doing. Develop issues, and then review with the steering committee, town council, and at subsequent public meetings. So we'll close this phase out after meeting with town council with a public meeting to say, this is what we hear from you. This is what we're hearing you want in this community as a change to the community. So then the second part, phase 2, is really drilling down for solutions and opportunities. So we now know the parameters for this study. Now we meet with our steering committee about 4 times, conduct focus groups as necessary, develop strategies, prepare a draft workbook, update town council, facilitate a public meeting, revise the workbook, and present to the planning commission, present executive summary, a plan of the public hearing, and then hopefully adoption at the town council meeting. I went through that really fast. I know you may have lots of other questions, but I wanted to mention briefly about the proposed schedule. We talked about beginning in August, and we present our findings for phase 1 in March, and then we begin in April of 2018 and be done by the end of 2018, so that hopefully your budget deliberations for 2019 will be informed by what the community has said they want done. So in the RFP, we were asked if we could at least address how we would go about doing a community center feasibility study. It's kind of we want all of this, and we wanted you to show that. We actually do community feasibility studies in our firm. We don't have to hire a consultant to do that. And I just wanted to show you the 3-step process that we do. One is develop a needs analysis, looking at all the different providers of community center services, like classrooms and gyms and fitness centers. And so we identify that. We look at the demographics and those kinds of things for density of population. Next one, please. We look at the program expectations. We talk to the community, our steering committee, about what is it you want in this community center? What should it, because that begins to start to give us a sense of what the costs are going to be. How big is this going to be? Is this going to be an 18,000 square foot building, it's gonna be 22,000, 30,000. Some of the ones, the big ones, like, are up into 40, 45,000 square feet, the really large ones. But we were seeing an average of about 20 to 25,000 square feet for a community center. So we start to look at what the costs are associated with that program. And then the last one is we look at costs, operation and maintenance, and what is the long-term sustainability? What are the membership fees going to be to support something like that? How is that going to affect? Is that going to cover all of the operating and maintenance costs, the program costs? Is it going to start to retire some of the money that was used for the capital cost to build the thing? And that's the kind of analysis we do should we proceed with community centers, and analysis is part of this. So again, I'm going fast. I feel like that FedEx commercial. I'm going really fast, but it's not about a book. It's not about producing a report. It's about solving problems, enhancing opportunities, and creating positive images. And here's an example. In Crafton, we give them a checklist of 10 things they need to do in the first 6 months. We really want to make sure it's clear as to how you proceed to implement these issues. So with that, very quick, I would be delighted, actually, to answer any comments or questions you have.
Jim, would you go back sort of to the beginning again and clarify this basic distinction between an implementable comprehensive plan and a so-called traditional plan? What you've gone through here is an implementable comprehensive plan.
That's correct.
But it's sort of in
Show
plain
that
English,
slide about
what does that mean compared to the traditional plan?
Thank you. So historically, the municipalities planning code in the state of Pennsylvania requires a comprehensive plan to include each of those topics: demographics, land use, housing, transportation, community facilities, natural resource protection, energy conservation. So what we have found in looking at those reports is that there are silos of information that don't talk to each other. And so there'll be 40 pages of demographics, but you won't see anybody integrating those demographics in the conclusions that come up. They'll look at economic development, but they won't look at transportation, for example. That's a separate category. And so we started to think that really when you solved a problem, you dealt with all of these things as you integrated them together. So if, for example, if you wanted to look at communications, that's not probably a good example, but let's talk about active transportation, which is using bicycles and pedestrians to connect people, public transportation to a lesser degree. That deals with demographics because you need to know the ages. It deals with land use in terms of where those go. It deals with housing because you want to connect the housing. Obviously transportation, community facilities, because oftentimes those active transportation corridors link the schools and the parks. And so all of a sudden you start to realize natural resource protection in terms of where we're going and swales and steep slopes. All of these things become integrated in one solution to a problem in the community. And so that's the difference. These individual silos, these kind of arbitrary conclusions to what this community has done, and this kind of integrative approach to solve problems. It's a very radically different approach. And I commend McCandless if you choose to do this, because you're kind of on the forefront of this kind of planning effort.
I may add to that, Jim, and for everybody else. The items on the left side in the traditional, not all of them, but in the traditional comp plan are specified as a requirement in the municipality's planning code. We were careful in writing the request for proposals to state that we don't want them in a silo, as Jim put them. We wanted them integrated. That is okay with DCED. They actually appreciated that and actually gave me some guidance on how to write the RFP with that. They don't want a perceived template, is the way it was put. And almost all the old comprehensive plans have a template. In fact, it would just go from one community to the other and just fill in the blanks. This is going to be entirely different.
I had understood from your previous presentations, Jim, and I think I'm right, that the emphasis of the implementable comprehensive plan is community opinion is critical, and it's needs driven. It's more inclusive of citizens compared to the traditional of citizens' opinions and views, and identifies the community needs directly from residents and focuses on whether the plan should be emphasized. That's sort of a capsule version?
That's exactly right. You don't want a Jim Paschak plan. You want a plan from McCandless. It doesn't matter what I think is appropriate. The community needs to say, and we need to be very aggressive and robust in the way we try to generate community involvement. And so it's not only terribly important in terms of defining what the relevant issues are, the topics, but then back when you're starting to try and recruit partners and create capacity, if people are involved and engaged in that process, they're going to want to become champions. And I think that's an important part of a successful plan, because that allows the process to go long after I'm not here. So, I'm not my demise, but not here on the campus.
Hopefully we can put you under here.
That can be arranged.
Oh my.
Jim, I've just one more question, and others on council may have questions, but how do you, or a person who's driving the development of the implementable comprehensive plan, assure the sustainability from the citizens? You know, I can envision a situation where you interview citizens or have a little town hall meeting. How do you really get people to get behind it on a sustained basis to achieve something?
Well, there are no guarantees, but what we observed in other plans is that when the community has a say and they feel like they're being listened to, they really genuinely think that this is their plan. We find that then there's a higher likelihood that the community will then support that on a process basis. If it's just kind of, here's your plan, it's done, what do you think? There's no reason to get excited about it or to approve it. So that's why we spend so much time on the first part in terms of community engagement, because it's really important to get people to believe and to listen, really listen and be empathetic to what's going on in the community. Yeah.
Any other questions from council?
So if I'm to understand, you're explaining all this to us, and then we're deciding to do this or not.
Correct.
Is that correct? But I noticed that key one, it says focus on real relevant issues. It said that we've already made all these decisions, or we've outlined all these things. When did we do that?
Yeah, so the RFP that we were provided with started to identify what the community has already been talking about in terms of possible issues. And that was really important. We often talk, if you maybe Denny talking about pre-planning, do some pre-planning before you do the plan to start to do it. And so my understanding is staff developed a list that was included in that RFP of possible issues, and it allowed us to get our heads around, because if there's a certain issue that we needed a consultant to bring in because our expertise couldn't cover it, then that was very helpful information in the beginning. But that, to be honest with you, that's just the starting point for us to be familiar with what the community issues are. But we're going to really, we don't know if those will be the issues or not, frankly.
So these aren't all the issues would be.
No,
Not at
and
all.
those
Some of
were,
them
those were just a guidance and a
Okay.
suggestion for a
Starters.
place to start.
Okay.
And part of putting that in there, if I may add, and this has more to do with the RFP itself, was to see how the respondents to the RFP would respond to those suggestions. And that's one of the reasons we ended up choosing Jim. He responded to them very well. The only one that we identified, and that was required by council, was the look at the community center. That was a direction from council. You all gave us that direction.
Anything else? Toby, do you want to add something?
Well, if council is done with any questions or elaboration on the contents of the proposal and the plan, the idea of how to do the plan, one of the key elements, Jim's referred to it several times, is the steering committee.
I was going to.
So we posted a memo with council, and we just posted in our packet on the website. This has been discussed for months in terms of composition, putting this together for the RFP, and the candidates that we reviewed and interviewed, and And then more specifically, when we narrow it down to Jim, basically his competition had similar responses about the composition. And Denny Pucco, as I put in my memo, from DCED, who's one of the people in DCED that is instrumental in trying to change this paradigm of approaching planning, as Jim's just talked about, so I don't have to belabor that. Denny told us back in February that the steering committee it's just inherent in this process. And some of the old comprehensive plans would just use the planning commission, which would be fine, but not this one, because this is intended to be more inclusive. So when Denny talked about this, he said 13 to 15 people. Jim, I think you concurred with that when you talked to us a couple of times now. And so we talked this over with Jim, Bill McKim, and Ted Minard from the Planning Commission, and Bruce and I, and then Bruce and I met again with Jim to talk about this composition, so that we understood what you were saying. So, Jim, I don't, you were talking about, maybe you should just talk in generalities here for a minute.
Sure.
About the steering committee, how it works, and how you go about getting the steering committee put together.
So the steering committee is ad hoc, so when the plan done, they shift to other roles in the municipality. It's important to have some planning commission members, because legally this plan has to be reviewed and approved by the planning commission and then recommended to town council. So it's important to have them involved. It's terribly important that representatives from town council be on this steering committee, because you're ultimately going to adopt this, and my hope is that you will embrace it in such a way that you will use it as a working tool in your working through the year. So you could stop at 5 or 6, but we find that there are other constituencies out there that might be beneficial to hear from. So, for example, in some communities, we'll have a developer and we'll have somebody from the EAC. We try to put them at the opposite ends of the table. But we work with them because the idea is that we really want to be talking about all kinds of issues. We have offline in Pine, we have the superintendent of schools involved, because that was really an important part of integrating their work with what the school was doing. It's awfully important we had representatives from business in Pine because of the corridor and the 19 corridor, and we wanted the business people to be engaged and be part of that. In fact, we ended up going out and talking to the Rotaries and everybody else to get their inputs as part of the public participation. In this case, maybe you want somebody from La Roche, or you want somebody from some of these other institutional people to talk about what their future dreams are for this community and how this all fits into that. We've tried to get clergy, Boy Scout and Girl Scout leaders, and all kinds of people that might have a constituency that might be engaged in that. The danger is that we can't have a steering committee of 30 or 40, because then it ends up being a lecture where nothing gets done. People dominate and talk, and there's just not a lot of time for discussion. And so we really like to keep it in that 12 to 15, so that there can be true discussion. Another aspect of the committee is that I really hope that you get people who are not single issue people. I hope that you have people that are passionate about the issues that they are concerned about, but I hope you get people that will listen, because sometimes it's got to be more than just the one issue that they care about. It's got to be community-wide. They need to care about the different key issues, and they need to be listeners and listen and take in and advocate for the positions that they might be interested in. But if we have people who are very single-minded, one issue, let's say, I'll probably get shot. I hate to say this, but like the president of a baseball association comes in, and that's the only thing he's interested in, and as soon as he's said his word, he disappears and never shows up to another meeting, because it's a one-issue person. That's not helpful in terms of the dialogue and conversation and the public process that we're doing. We want everybody to be engaged. And so I add that sociological aspect to your committee.
So, Jim, if I may interrupt your train of thought, if it sounds like you're coming to some kind of a conclusion there. We identify the steering committee Now, there's no set way to do that, but you identified a number of people, citizens at large. You didn't specifically say that, but we want some sort of at-large members on there, I'm sure. But how does that membership effectively get about the task of directing the work in the community and soliciting ideas? Mechanically, how does that work?
Absolutely. So as a steering committee, we'll meet, and we will, at each of the meetings, we will have an agenda and lay out tasks that they're responsible for at the meeting. So there's not a lot of homework. We'll be doing all of our work in the meetings. We will ask them to attend the public meetings. If we have a booth at Community Day, we might want to have somebody help us staff that booth, for example. There may be other things where we ask them to reach out to the community if they represent certain segments of the community, to reach out through various organizations they do.
You just triggered my, if I may,
Sure.
I apologize again. You mentioned we're having a community day coming up. I don't know whether you
Number
just,
9.
yeah, that's exactly right. Would it be worthwhile? I take it you'd say yes, to have a booth there and have some representative from the
Committee, and I'll be there.
yeah.
And we could, what we do is then we talk about, we drag people in. We encourage people to come into the booth, and we have maps, and we ask them, what is it that's important in your community?
That would be a useful thing to do then, in other words.
Yes, it's just one more layer of this multi-layered approach to public opinion. It's just another input. It may repeat everything we get from other methods, but my experience is we get 2 or 3 kernels of something that I say, oh, I wish I'd thought about that. That's great information. I'm glad we do it. Bring that back to the steering committee and share that.
Could you tell the assembly, those assembled here, a little bit about your staff, their strengths, their weaknesses, and how you
No weaknesses.
get there? No weaknesses. I want to give you a chance to be modest.
So I would lead this effort. So that's either good news or bad news for you. That's been very passionate about this. I think this is really important. And so I would lead this I would do all of meeting facilitation. And then our senior project manager, Elaine Kramer, and some of you met, would be the kind of day-to-day person that pulls everything together. She's someone who's had 30 years of journalism career, managing hundreds of reporters for regional newspapers, and has made a career change in her 50s, and now is working, thank goodness, for us. And so she would be the project manager, and needs to say she writes well. And then we have GIS specialists and designers that help us do the photo simulations and all the technology that I have no clue how it works. And so that's the kind of staff that we put together for each of these projects. There's 4 or 5 people that work on these projects from our staff.
When you worked with the other communities, how did you select the people to be on this committee? Did you advertise for them, or?
I would say, I'm not sure in the 40 or 50 plans we've done, I don't know that anyone has ever advertised.
How did you select the people?
Generally, I was asked my opinion of who should be on it category-wise, and then they say, oh yes, in Unity Township in Westmoreland County, farming is a big deal, so we wanted someone from the Conservation District, and we wanted a farmer. And so that's who they decided, and in that case the supervisors, but the council would decide. Generally speaking, it was a very quick thing. Everybody kind of came to a conclusion within a few weeks as to what that makeup should be. So I've not actually, to be honest with you, been involved with that. I've learned you can't have a real large one.
Well, I'm looking that you're saying here 1 to 2 business people.
Yes.
Well, how do you select one? We have a lot of businesses in McCandless. How do you select?
I hope you'll know someone who is willing to commit the time to this process. That's a challenge because as a small business owner, I know how much time my business takes up, and it's hard to volunteer then. So you need to make sure that someone who's committed to the community and looks beyond the business, but also is able to articulate what the business people need. And generally people, yeah, there are probably 20 people that represent it, but get 1 or 2 of those to represent that. And if they say, you know, Jim, you need to come to the Rotary Club to talk to business people, you need to come to a chamber meeting or something, we'll go out and talk to them. So everyone gets involved as part of that data collection or community involvement part of that piece.
And so would it be that small, I don't mean to be asking so many questions,
No,
but
no, I'm happy to.
would it be that small group that would select the people, or would it be council that
I
decides?
think staff and council typically put their heads together and say, well, how about this person? And that's the way, it's usually not, I mean, you may be overthinking this a little bit too much. It's
Probably, but
it's, you know, the people who are volunteers and who are committed to the community, you know them over the years, and you just tap a few restaurants.
You know,
thank you.
while we're talking, you know, there's been many studies.
Yes, that's why we have on the list there,
I
look at the
suspect
others.
At least, I could probably figure 6 or 7. We even had a recreation study done, and we did have community involvement. In fact, that was a North Pittsburgh Community Development Corporation that did the recreation study for all the communities in that group.
I've heard that, yes.
And then we went on from that study and had our own done for McCandless. And we did have group involvement. In fact, we had a room full of equestrians at the time.
It's not equestrians, it's skateboarders, yes.
Yeah, the equestrians filled this room. We had to go into the big room
Uh-huh,
because they wanted more
sure.
trails and more horses. And probably we had more horses on Grubbs Road at that time than we had people. But it was kind of interesting to listen to all that.
Yeah, we would incorporate all of that, because there's no point in redoing that. So we
you-
look at the recommendations of every one of those 6 studies, and we assess them based on today's knowledge.
How much of it has been fulfilled?
That's right.
I always look at that and say, all right, here's this study, we did it, what's been fulfilled?
Exactly. That's right.
I know one area we did. At least, and then we did build the fields and the playgrounds. We didn't build the horse trails.
Well, those studies that have been done in the past certainly could be referred to, I'm sure,
Absolutely.
as a starting point or some input into the process in which we're engaged. But do you have anything else, anybody on council, or you, sir, Jim, you want to add anything to what you've already said? Toby?
Well, as to the selection process, with Community Day not too far off, about 2 months, if the steering committee is fleshed out, that would be great, because then Jim could have an initial meeting with them. If it's not, I mean, I think council really has to decide about, because we have created within the past year an appointment policy. But I think something like this, you might want to be able to, it looks like it could lend itself to merging the two. I mean, council can select with 2 council members, for example. You're the zoning chair.
Well, the proposal, Tony, if I could just interrupt you for just a moment, please. There's a couple of the sort of ex officio members, as I think as Jim, or I don't know who developed this list originally, but the council members, for example, or not the whole council, but maybe some of them, the planning commission, members of the planning commission, the land use administrator, town manager, and then you get down to a broader group of people, the citizens in general, representatives from the institutions, the school districts. We have a very big school district here.
There's an example where I think you would, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
That's right.
you would, we would ask the school district to interact with us and say,
Yeah.
who would you want to have as a representative?
But I think we want to start that process. I agree, Toby, but I think and maybe people would like to weigh in from council right now, and what if they've given thought to, this would be the group of people that would be assembled to sort of generally direct what's going on and move forward.
I think it would be proper, before we dive into doing this, for us to see a contract, see what actually is included and what will be on this information that we got here on the summary for the comprehensive plan. It had a fee of what the cost would be, $87,655, and then I noticed in here that it said that was an estimate. So I thought that was the total top
Yeah,
out
so
fee.
let me clarify that.
But my point is that there are several contractual questions that may make a difference on whether we actually, want to go forward. So before we
Oh, I would
start
hope not.
making, well, I think we do need to see all that. I think, we need to, there's estimates and approximates and I think we need to see, a contract
So
and
let
make
me
sure
explain the
that-
whole contracting process. I have a great incentive to give you what you want. So we have a template that we did for all of our clients, hundreds of clients. And we have that template, and we fill in the data, we just attach the proposal, and then we give it to your solicitor. He says, no, you can't take my second son, we need a different clause for that. We change this, we don't like the idea that you have control and copyright ownership of the drawings. And so the solicitor will then X out 3 or 4 of the paragraphs, which is a normal kind of thing. And then we say, fine, is there anything else you want to add or change? And then we accept any of those changes, we just accept it.
Well, I think that the point is, and I believe I agree with Kim, we don't want to get the cart before the horse. We have to determine who the person is going to be. That selection, we're sort of down the road, as you appreciate with you as your firm as the doer, so to speak. But it has to be memorialized in some kind of contractual
Absolutely.
documents. And the sooner we get those 2 items done, the better. Then we can move forward and start to
Can I have that to
assemble
you
people.
at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning? Because it's a template,
The cost,
it'll be attached.
when we conducted interviews with you, Jim, the cost, and I confirmed this with an email this afternoon, that your is a up to cost and not to exceed.
Right, so that's a cap. So if we spend 50,000, you will be charged 50,000. If we were to spend 90,000, we only charge you 87,000. It's a deal for the municipality. So it's an hourly plus expenses being mileage. That's about it. It's mileage.
But you have a so-called draft contract that you can propose to us, for us to take a look at.
It's like 2 or 3 pages long. And then we attach the proposal.
We attach the RFP.
The RFP is A, and then our proposal is
And the
B.
proposal.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure, because it does say on your page BI that you have that the estimated fees. So I just wanted to make sure about that, because we don't want to get into a lot of overages and that. And I also want to know, how much did we have budgeted for this?
100,000.
We had 100,000.
And in terms of overages, I'd like to speak to that, without upsetting any of my engineering colleagues. Planners haven't figured out how to charge more than the fee. I would love it if we could figure that out. I'd love to go to a seminar on how to charge more than what our fee is. But all the communities we work with, they have a set budget amount. That's what they can afford. Oftentimes it's a DCD match of 50-50, and there's not a $1 more available. And so we end up just doing whatever it takes, even if it means shifting a few things around. Maybe instead of 5 steering committee meetings, we do 4 because somebody wants something else done. And we shift the internal parts at the agreement of the steering committee, and we always stick to that maximum amount. And I would have to say, in the last 7 comprehensive plans I've done, only one of them has come under budget, and we've absorbed the additional cost in the other 6. Because it's the right thing to do. We're doing what's right.
I think you meant
for the
over
community.
budget, didn't you?
Pardon me?
Over budget, didn't you? You said
Yes, we were over budget on 6 of the 7, and we absorbed that
Oh,
cost,
okay.
because that's the way it is, the planning. Like I said, I'd love to learn how to charge for that. But, we're used to communities that have a fixed amount, and there's just not $1 more, and that's just the way we work.
Kim, that was the same question that we asked, and that's when Jim responded to Toby's question during our interview process about it is a not to exceed price.
Okay.
So Toby confirmed that again today via email.
And
Okay.
it's the best of all worlds for the community.
And could we have that contract run by us too before we just, so we
Hey,
can look
that's-
it over after the
That's the
solicitor
plan.
has it?
Yes, that's the plan.
Perfect, thank you.
The contract would include, I take it from what you said a moment ago, or somebody said, the RFP and the proposal, those 2 documents would be there, sort of as
Right.
as
Attachment A
attachments.
is the RFP, attachment B is the
right.
proposal.
And then the meat of the contract would spell out with some specificity what you're gonna do and how you're gonna do it.
Well, there's a lot of that
Yeah.
in the RFP.
Yeah, well, there-
and in the
absolutely.
proposal.
Well, there is,
I
but-
think the contract.
But it's
we're gonna
more than
see-
just stapling the RFP together
Right,
with the
It-
proposal.
but it'll wrap around what's there.
So we've gotta take a look at it, see
Sure.
what he gives us and get
Yeah,
doing.
He and I have talked to nobody else.
Okay.
so a
No,
lot of the rest of that.
I've never lost a job because we can't agree on a contract.
Right.
Whatever you want.
Is that- Yeah. Okay, if there's nothing further from council, we have a procedure that those of you who are new to this, we adopted a comment procedure whereby anyone who wishes to make a comment may do so in the audience I'm referring to, and we have a 5-minute limitation on how long you can talk. Now, I'm going to give the lady who raised, I don't know your name. What is your, please identify yourself. Step up to the mic.
Just push that down, Marie. Oh, you got it on?
Oh, counsel, you want to
Push
take,
it
you
down,
gotta-
Marie.
you gotta watch on your,
Get a good height.
I'll take a look at
It's
this.
adjustable, it's adjustable.
Hi, good
Okay.
evening. My name's Marcia Caliendo. I live on Mohican Avenue. Just really 3 quick questions on 3 of the agenda items. On item number 2, when you're talking about the Stonecrest of Pittsburgh, you said it's adjacent to the LA Fitness and between CA Ventures McCandless Senior Living Facility. Are we to assume that that extra block that was kind of blacked out on the plans, there's going to be another assisted living in the works?
It will not be assisted living. The proposal, actually, we received the proposal last month. We didn't, the planning commission didn't, had a lot of comments, so it ended up being tabled. It was a retail space with a very small restaurant, and it was
Okay.
a very small restaurant.
Okay, I was just wondering if there were gonna be 2 senior places next door to one another.
We do have.
Not that there's an issue, but,
We do have 2, but not there.
okay,
Across the street from each other.
okay. Number 4, the public hearing next week on the, that property on Perry Highway. Just a quick question relative to, if you can enlighten me to the process as to what makes you have a public hearing on some things and not others? I mean, there's been a lot of things going on, Heritage Center, a shooting range, that we don't know anything about, but we're having a public hearing on an equipment storage, which I live nearby there. I'm going to be here next week. I'm curious about that. But what's your process, and is that written down as to, you know, if something goes over so many variances? Can you speak to that?
Bill?
Should I
Bill's
answer
chairing
it?
it. Chair.
Yeah. Well, it's driven by the ordinances and what type of, is that a consideration? What type of a building is that a consideration? Not everything requires a public hearing. What precisely, what do the ordinances say with respect to that?
This ordinance
Yeah, it
specifically to this use.
Okay.
This use, because council saw this use as being something that would have an impact on, in this case, the highway, the neighbors, whatever, they saw fit to add additional requirements onto it. And there are a list of them. It's still permitted use, but it's permitted with the idea that they have to meet these requirements.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one time, and probably the only time that I know of, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the only time that I know that council acts as a quasi-judicial body. Their decision on this is actually termed a judgment. It's not a policy decision, it's a judgment. And they have to verify, or when the applicant presents, and we have reviewed the plan that they have, it goes through the public hearing process. Council has to vote on that. Did they meet all these requirements?
Bruce, what about her basic question? And it's really a good one, it's fundamental. What is it that requires a public hearing to occur?
You answered that question. I thought you answered that with your statement. It is specified by ordinance that this is a public hearing.
Okay.
This is a conditional use. 2 types of public hearings that occur with regard to uses. One is a special exception, that goes to the zoning hearing board. The other is a conditional use, it goes to town council. But again, town council, and that acts as a quasi-judicial body.
And then what's more common is listed in the ordinance as a permitted use. So if, it depends on the zone district.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, I think, 18 zone districts. We may, I don't know if that's the record, but that's a lot of zone districts. But we have an example, an R1 and an R2, two different types of single-family districts that have permitted uses in them, and those permitted uses are homes. And the R2, though, adds one, which would be duplexes,
Mhm.
2-unit developments, and that's a conditional use because that deviates from the basic use of what's the single-family concept. So just another, I'll just pick one out of the air. C3. C3 is our highway commercial district. So there's a lot of commercial uses there, a lot of permitted uses. There's a laundry list in the ordinance. I can't even think off the top of my head if there's a special exception or a conditional use. It could be, but it wouldn't be that common. So it depends on the zone district, and the town council over the years when they set up the zoning ordinance, they determine where the zone districts are. They determine which should be permitted because it's obviously going to be fairly commonplace where it's designed for a certain purpose. You mentioned the shooting range is a permitted use in a building like. There's an office in that as well. Even though it's a permitted use, in that case there was a traditional neighborhood district overlay district, which is another concept, that was put into effect for McCandless Crossing.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a number of permitted uses within that area, and one of them is if it's an office building, and if it has a place for training, that's okay. And if it happens to be shooting, that's okay too. But even if it's a permitted use, it's still vetted in almost the same way. It's 120 days to review overall. Goes to the planning commission. May get tabled, may not, may go through. Goes to the council zoning committee, which is where you are tonight.
Sure.
And then it goes to the town council. All those meetings function almost the same as a public hearing, with one exception. The public hearing, in this case, when it's inserted for a conditional use, is just that. People are there to ask questions. So when this hearing takes place next week, council will ask questions. Council shouldn't opine or make decisions. They're there to ask questions. You're there to ask questions.
Okay.
And so people will be asked to come up, you have an opportunity to be heard
Okay.
during that process, and then it's basically, let's get the questions out so the person that's making this proposal can go back and see if they have to go to the drawing board again. Because it may be either more complicated or more different than what's there.
Okay, I just would ask that,
We're over 5 minutes, but go ahead, Will.
Okay.
Something else, right?
Okay.
I think our answers took a lot longer here.
thank you very much. I was wondering if I was on the clock on that one.
That's
Bill, the 5 minutes when it's a question and you permit someone answering, the 5 minutes is per.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And just one more on the comprehensive plan, that was a very good overview, thank you. I just asked the committee that when you name your steering committee, please consider diversity, the citizens of the residents of McCandless Township, in addition to businesses, and we just don't want a committee of all like-minded individuals. So thank you very much.
Well said, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Thank you for that comment.
Okay, Georgianne?
That's why I was trying to.
Georgiana Lycarn, Grubbs Road.
Before you begin, Georgianne, what was the lady who just spoke, what was her name?
Just over here.
I'm sorry,
Marcia Caliendo.
Oh, I'm sorry, Marcia Caliendo.
Caliendo, did you get that?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
I
thanks.
signed in
Did
as
you,
well.
she signed
Okay,
it.
thank you very much. Please,
Sure, thank you, sir.
please go ahead.
In particular, since the gun range has already been brought up, and Mr. Ledong was there the other day whenever they had the groundbreaking ceremony, I had heard whispers about this particular gun range, and I'm the Second Amendment advocate. I think it's great. However, I was concerned whenever I went to it and I saw on the banner that it said, it promoted it basically as a firing/training range. And then one of the associates, who is a business partner with Mr. Sam Rosenberg of Impacts, this associate
is involved owner of the Scottsdale Gun Club, which is the largest gun club, private shooting indoor range in the United States. They have 32 lanes there. We're gonna have 30. On that particular day, on the 4th of July, I went on that website while I was at the grand opening, and they were having a machine gun special that day. I really believe in training, but this, I believe, is also morphing into an entertainment facility, which is two different things when you consider the location of where it will be. Were the Sisters of Divine Providence informed that this had been morphed from a office building to this particular type of facility?
It didn't morph. It was clearly brought out during the approval process that there would be a shooting range in there, a firing range for and training and citizenry.
Yes, but there is a difference between advertising it as a
No, that's different.
entertainment venue, and they do expect to have gun shows there. Like I said, the machine guns have bachelor parties there, birthday parties. I wonder about the true intent. I'm all for training. I'm all for people learning, but for an entertainment venue, is that permissible? And again, the sensitivity of the area it's in, with the schools, with the daycare center across the street. I'm just curious if they were at all really informed about the true intent of what was going to be happening there.
Well, let me just speak to that. First of all, the gentlemen that are the owners and future operators have been here. And I had reservations about it myself, as those who were at the meeting will recall. But I was satisfied that his explanation that there's a first-rate, extremely careful organization. These are not just a bunch of yahoos that are up there, shooting, testing out their pistols and machine guns or whatever else they're going to shoot. It's carefully organized and controlled. If it's not, they ought to be stopped from doing it. I mean, if that happens, partially through. But anyway, I understand your comment and I appreciate it.
Well, especially since we've had incidents at cinemas, those types of things, which are all located within just shooting distance.
You mean outside of McCandless, fortunately.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, I mean, our culture has changed, and
It
I just
has
really, it really has. And I just wonder if this is the right location for such a facility.
One of the problems, and I'm not getting into a debate with you. I mean, I'm just making a comment. These things, the proposal to seek approval to build this, to have it, occurs, and then there's notice is given. The guy, I think I've heard him. Like, what's the man's name that runs it? I heard him at the planning commission. The planning commission. He's come in here and talked about it. I mean, he's had a great opportunity to explain what it is he does, and so it's kind of difficult at the tail end of it to say, gee, what I'm saying, we ought to be raising these questions at the beginning. And I'm not shy to you for not having done that, Georgiana.
No, that's.
But I'm really not. I'm really not. But see, that is a problem. But
Well, again, I don't think it was presented. I mean, when I read about it in the minutes from March of 2016, it said a 4-story office building, and with a only possible tenant as Impasse.
Yeah.
And now it morphed, and I never saw it again in the minutes anywhere. And
See,
unfortunately, I missed some meetings, but it's morphed into this thing that I saw at the.
It's not going to be in the minutes after it's approved, because it
But
goes
it
through the
morphed.
process.
Yeah.
It changed into
Well,
he's the only tenant. This is all that's going to be happening
see.
there.
No, he did say something about the shooting range, because I questioned the sound. When he
Right.
brought it up, I questioned the sound in the area.
But it's more of an entertainment venue, not strictly educated. It's now multifaceted.
Georgiana,
5 minutes.
No, it's not that. We're not going to shoot off a firecracker here if you don't finish in 5 minutes. In fact, you haven't had 5 minutes yet.
Okay.
But have you expressed what you wanted to express? That's all I'm concerned.
Basically, I still have concerns, and I just wonder, some of the people I've talked to that live in the area and so forth, they really weren't aware of the true nature of this. And that's why I asked if it was presented to them, as Marcia said too, as a open forum, a hearing or whatever, because even in the Scottsdale Gun Club, where his partner now has the largest one in the United States, it took years before it was approved because there was a public process and input. And this being our new town center, the crown jewel, I just hate to see it get a black eye. Like, for example, the one over in Homestead, the shopping center there, which people have avoided somewhat now because of the
Because there's
shootings.
crime seems to be,
Yeah.
Okay, do you have anything else, Georgianne?
That's all. Thank you.
I don't want to cut you off on
No,
doing it,
that's
but I
fine.
think.
Thank you.
I
I
think
just
I
wanted
think we
to
got the sense
express
of what
my
your point
opinion.
is. Thanks for making it.
I do agree with her,
Yeah.
because that was my understanding too, that that's the reason it was acceptable to be there, because it was an education, that's, not industrial, institutional, that it was a safety place, a safety gun place, not just anybody could go in there and shoot.
Well,
And-
it's all done under supervision, as I understand it, that they
But
people-
that's not how I understood it. Is that how everyone else understood it?
Well,
That it was just
I
an
don't think
open
he-
gun range?
I don't think he presented it as an entertainment.
This
Yeah,
is,
I
this
thought he-
isn't Scottsdale Gun Club though. Was it, I believe that's what Georgie's talking about. With the birthday parties and
Well, she's just wondering what's happening,
She's
because
wondering.
when they were there, the person who was presenting was saying that anyone who can come in and shoot here. And I was under the impression that it was a school for gun safety, not
Training, it was a
It
training
was
center.
a training center for police and for
Right.
school things,
That's
and that
what
it
it
was
did
an
say.
education
Not only.
place, not a,
If I may speak to that, the way it was presented to us was that it was going to be a training area. There were going to be memberships. For example, if I wanted to go in there and shoot, I would have to get a membership. I would be screened in whatever way that I would be screened in order to be able to go in there and shoot. And they were also going to have some weapons seals also. All three of those things were brought up. I think we need clarification, given what a group of you have already told me, and some other people. what
What's
they've
our
said.
opportunity to have that clarification at this point?
I should probably talk to Mr. Rosenberg about it.
Is there, does this have to come up, I'm sorry to talk over you.
If you recall, I questioned him quite heavily about the impact area.
Yep.
Did he,
And whether they said they were gonna use it for training purposes.
Right.
That's what I
Exactly what he
understood.
said.
Well-
Not exclusively.
no.
No, it
But let's-
was.
Let's be fair.
There were three aspects to it, and those are the three that I had mentioned.
Right.
And I think we just need clarification
We sure do.
uh, from the owner.
Okay.
Uh,
What's the next step in the procedure we have right now? This thing has to be voted on at some point?
No, I just need to talk to him and
Okay,
clarify what he told us.
Would it be appropriate
If
for him
he's
to-
gonna change that,
Can we ask him to come in and
Come in,
speak
can
to
he
us
come in and-
again?
I'm not sure that's gonna be necessary. If he just says, oh, it's the way I presented it, I'm not sure what this
Okay,
is all
well,
about.
see what he
with
says.
what he was yeah.
We may hold that out as a possibility. It seems to me if there's,
Yeah,
if
right.
there's enough
If need
concern,
be,
we
we
ought
can
to,
come back, we can
Okay.
have him come back.
okay.
But with the concerns that have been raised by a number of people now, I think I need to get that clarification from him.
Okay?
May I?
You certainly may.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
Barbara Richards, Manor Court. Mr. McCandless,
Oh.
this is, I was at the groundbreaking also, and this is the 6-foot sign that led
Yeah.
you into it. It says clearly, the most prominent thing is indoor firing range.
So that's for sure.
Yeah, that's clear about that.
That was clear.
And
was clear
and I
before.
spoke to the a person, an employee of Impacts, and asked them if I was just a person off the street and wanted to come in and shoot, could I come in and shoot? And he said, sure. And I said, well, you say membership and limited membership. And he said it was kind of like a gym membership. This is what he said to me, it's
Yeah.
like a gym membership. I said, but I could come in here and shoot, just a person off the street. And he said yes.
Okay.
And then they proceeded with the, and Mr. Walkowskis, this is your area, this is your
Yeah.
ward. So I wondered, if you're aware of this too, what is actually going in there. As it proceeded and he gave introductions, he introduced what he called his right-hand man, who was this man from Scottsdale, and who is was responsible for putting in this world's largest indoor firing range. And he said that that this was a model for it, that this range that they're putting in that the Scottsdale was a model for what they're doing. So I don't think that has anything to do with education, or they talked about training women. He even said schools And to which a couple of us said, what schools are you, how do you mean? You're gonna teach the kids gun safety? And his point was, no, teachers. So I wonder, and I think, I don't know if I remember correctly, but I think I remember them saying that they had great support, that the teachers in our area were excited about this coming in so they could be trained.
Yeah, I don't know
And
what they- yeah.
I wondered if anybody has spoken to the superintendent, the teachers' unions, or anything else, the school board about this, but they're saying that it has been, that they're very excited about this coming in, the teachers.
Well, now, what I don't know, and I hear what you're saying, I take that as a given that somebody said that, but I have no idea whether that would, I would be surprised if that represents the official, the official intent of that
Yeah.
organization, but that's why we need more information to nail
Well,
it down.
I would ask that if you are going to go back to them and talk to them, that at that point, that we actually have maybe the public hearing with these people that we should have had the first time.
Well, I'm not
and
sure we
get
should
all
have it.
this out.
As far as I'm concerned, I would encourage us to bring him in and have a, I don't know what you call it, a public hearing, but he can tell his side of the story. Do our procedures contemplate that happening?
I'm hoping that I can just talk to him and tell him, remind him what he said at our meetings. and stick
Well,
to what
But
he
remind-
said.
but don't you feel that enough of us have questions?
If you want to do it, it's up to you guys.
Yeah, that's
I would
what-
like to see him come in.
Yeah, I think so too.
Sure.
Again, I'd also like to end with, I don't think that there's any reason for anybody to train on an automatic weapon in a
Well,
facility.
I would
And
be,
they're-
let me just say one thing. I was in the military, I know firearms, I'm not the world's leading expert, but I would be absolutely astounded if they have automatic weapons down there. That means a
would
full
think they
fire.
will.
I would expect
Do
Sure they will.
Yes.
do they,
Yes, they
they have
are.
automatic?
When you train a CIA or Secret Service
they
agent,
are.
absolutely.
They have them at
I would be
the municipal
astounded.
building, or I mean, at the Allegheny County
This
building.
is their
Yeah,
model.
let me see that.
I
This
wouldn't
is
be
their
astounded.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what this guy
They
has to
have-
say.
We haven't done
According to these culture.
We haven't done
Ultimate
this.
shooting experience awaits you.
Where does it say automatic?
Well, it's the picture.
Oh, well,
Okay.
well, let's
Do
see
you
what,
have that?
let's see what he
Okay.
says. Barbara, I don't want to, I
So the
mean,
answer is
Okay,
I-
this
I
is
don't
not
think
the
we should-
form.
yeah,
I know,
the
that's why I'm
yeah.
asking if we can get this all
the
out.
answer is yes to your question.
Okay, thank you,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Rita Martin, Grubbs Road. I just wanted to say that when buildings are going, well, first of all, this was in March a four-story office building, and all of a sudden it's only a two-story building. I think that's an issue. It was approved as a four-story office building, and there's going to be no offices there. That's one thing. Secondly, when buildings come, you always advertise them on our page. You know, we know about the restaurants that are coming. This was never mentioned on any of our pages, Facebook or otherwise. The only reason I heard about that was from someone who said it was on Business Times and that there would be a groundbreaking on July 4th, but I was too busy on July 4th to go. But I think that if it should have been advertised, and you should have let people know in the area, the businesses, the schools, the hospital, they should be required to have some input into what goes in that might be controversial in some ways, even though I do believe in the right to own a gun and the right to know how to use it. That's very important. Training is important. There would be fewer domestic problems for women if they knew how to take care of themselves. I do believe that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rita. Anyone else? Yes.
I'm going to change the topic a little bit.
Okay.
I'm Deborah Sagan from Parkmont Estates. And I had a question about the senior living with the McKnight Road corridor being right there. And I apologize if I didn't get this clearly, but you had said there's a buffer of plantings and then just the guardrail. Excuse me. Would it be possible perhaps to have some kind of a fence or a decorative, not chain link or anything? Because you know, just even today, in the past 2 days, there have been people who have wandered off from places, and so that's just a suggestion. I mean, you don't have to answer that just right now.
So oftentimes
As
we,
the chair.
Yeah.
Chair's got the meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
and Don will help us out here, but oftentimes we do add,
Into the microphone.
sorry, oftentimes we do add
Could
certain
you direct your
decorative-
comments and questions to the chair? The meeting's
Yes,
conducted here.
yes.
Please.
So oftentimes we
Same
do
thing.
add decorative fences in times that we've operated in a building and say, okay, well, there's a need to protect this area more than what we originally planned. So we have done that in the past, and it's certainly a possibility. And I'll let Don add something to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, thanks. I'd explore that further with Bruce, is really what you ought to do.
Sure.
Thank you. Don Rosen, I think the one key point that I want to make is that on our particular building, there are no doors that open directly up towards it. That's why we moved it to the courtyard side. So the only resident that might be out there going would be, they came out the front door and then instead of going to their car, which if you look at the site plan, everything is to the opposite side. So, I mean, could we do it? Sure. And if the direction from council is to do so, we would. But I think the need and requirement in order to provide that additional security really isn't there by how we reconfigured some things after talking with Bruce.
Well, in light of the comments, would you please explore it? Are you both Dawn? Dawn?
I'm Don and it's Jed.
Jed.
Oh, Jed, that's why. I'm sorry. Explore it with Bruce and see what we think.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
And one other comment, I did want to comment on how I really enjoyed the presentation from Mr. Pashak on the comprehensive plan proposal. I'm very excited to see that come to fruition. And I have visited some of the example sites that he proposed tonight, Collier Township and Pine and a couple of others. So, you know, I'm really encouraged by what we heard tonight, and thank you for moving forward on this. And I guess I have 2 cents to weigh in on the other development with the impacts, being a former educator in the district and a resident here for many years. I would just like to see maybe another site considered if at all possible. We all know that the Second Amendment is in place and everybody has a right to do that. But it does concern me, the location, and maybe we can work with the developer on that, perhaps. And also, I would also want to speak to the person who is in charge of impacts to ask them about licensing with the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms licensing. And I understand the police chief has to have some kind of licensing in place whenever that happens.
When he comes in, why don't you make sure you're there?
I do want to be
And
there.
then you
I
can-
will. Well,
So-
that's the other
Okay.
comment. I realize that this is kind of after the fact, but when I look back, we didn't have a lot of the electronic mechanisms in place in the town for informing residents and citizens about what was going on. And I was actually out of town in both February and March of 2016. And then I guess, I don't know if I missed the April meeting, but I do remember that 4-story office building, because I remember thinking, oh, okay, thinking about it. So yes, I will be there, and not to belabor the point. Thank you so much for taking our comments.
Thank you very much. Let you come up here twice, remember? 3 times.
So we have a developmental section on our page, or development section on our webpage. And I mentioned this to John, and I know he was talking to Toby about it, but my suggestion was that whenever there's a coming and going of any business, of any company, that we can put that on that webpage so that people can see that and have just one more place. Because it's just interesting to know that GG Cupcakes are coming here, or that they're leaving here, or just the comings and going in the town. I think that would be a good way to utilize that and then we could put this on there, and then people would know. And like I said, we didn't have all these things in place then, but we have them now. So maybe we could, as things come and go, we could put those on there.
Okay, is that your comment?
That is my comment.
Thank you.
And that's
Is
gonna
there,
be okay.
is there anybody from the audience that would like to, is there anyone who wants to make a comment, who hasn't already made a comment? please comment.
Yep.
Step up to the mic, identify yourself.
Members of council, my name is Mark Donatelli. I live up on Griffith. And the first thing I'm going to bring up is the shooting range, but just quick. We have a shooting range down the road, runs by the Connie. Noise all day long. Automatic weapons, you can hear an AK-47.
Okay.
They're using.
I want to have that demonstrated to me, whether
Yeah,
they're really automatics or things that look like they're automatics. You know, how many times you've seen
Today
somebody-
they were automatic. I could
Were
hear
they?
it
I don't know.
myself.
I'm
Well,
not-
yeah, they,
I hear them too, all day long.
yeah. And they're using AK-47s.
I can hear them where I
They're
live,
outside though,
but
right?
it- but I wouldn't
Yeah.
say it's all
They're
down.
If you know what an
outside. They're gonna be
I
AK-47,
inside.
sure do, yeah.
Those
okay.
are outside.
All right, well,
Pardon
I
me?
should proceed.
Those are outside.
Yeah, well, Anthony Arms was going to build
Go ahead.
a shooting range over there on 885, and they wouldn't let them do it out there, Pleasant Hills. They have a shooting range downstairs. They built it downstairs. Okay, another thing I wanted to bring up is our new beautiful senior home we're building. What I like to see is I already approached some of the contractors. I made it known. What they ought to really do is put solar collectors up on the roof. And I did bring up about plug-ins for electric cars, because senior citizens drive electric cars. We all do. You know, you don't see a young kid 25 years old. He's driving a four-wheel Jeep with the boom boxes.
You don't burn a lot of
But anyway, I like to see them do it, and if they'll be eligible for a lot of credits from the federal government and the state. And another thing I would like to say to everybody, if you're not doing nothing some Sunday, you have it right here, take a ride up to CCAC on Ride 8 and see what they're doing up there. And a lot of us would like McCandless to do some of that up there.
What are they doing up there?
Their whole campus is run on solar power. I mean, you have to go up and look at it. And the way they did all the engineering to it and everything. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good comments. Okay, have we exhausted our pool of people who want to ask questions? I think, can we safely say, if that's the, adjourn. Courtney, I will adjourn the zoning committee meeting. Boy, it's a nice long zoning committee meeting.
Finished?
I am finished.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Finance and Personnel Committee. Next committee. Finance and Personnel Committee. Number 2 is to review check listing number 7 with accounting distribution for the period June 15th, 2017 to July 5th, 2017. And in your packet, council, you have a list of all the bills. Anyone have a question on that? Did anyone have a chance to look at it, or do you
I
need some
did, but
time?
I can't find where I put it. Oh, there it is.
No questions?
When's the last time we rebid things like our IT services or life insurance or things like that? Do we have a routine that we do it like every couple of years, we rebid those things?
I asked Bruce to get region, but we're on an extension on the contract with IT. It's Mara Duzel there are auditors, but they have a division that is an IT division. So they're still under contract. We could quote that out. That's a professional service. And insurance is through the MRM program, and since that is a heavy dividend program, so we, by our membership in there, the longer you stay, the more you generate dividends. And that is a trust that we're actually, all of us that are in the trust, which is most of the municipalities in certain Allegheny County, it goes beyond Allegheny though, into western Pennsylvania. That board is us, I mean, it's a municipal board, so that's why we don't bid that out. That, we go with that organization, and again, the longer you stay, the greater the dividends are. And that's
when-
especially true for the workers' comp.
And that's when at the end of the year, you get that large check back. You know, when we do that at Seven Springs.
So it really wouldn't behoove us to bid that out.
But do we have any protocol for how often we bid things like our engineers or just any of these other companies?
Well, when you have successful professional services, you know, you stay with them unless they go sour. That's usually the case, and
But you want to give
so
the
no.
lowest competent bid too. I mean,
Not
you want to be
necessarily. Well, competent, yes, but,
lowest competent. Yeah.
well, you know,
Should we consider a
professionals-
protocol where we rebid things every so often, just to keep everybody on their toes?
well, there's a whole continuity when it comes to engineers. Lawyers, the same thing. Again, it's usually not bid frequently or routinely. Those really are not, unless, again, they there's problems developing, the company starts to sag in certain areas or whatever. Yes, some things are biddable. In fact, we're, Reg and I talked, I don't see, is he here yet? Excuse me. Let me get Reg. We'll do our best to answer, but it's right, it's off, Joanne, it's beyond list of bills. The discussion is beyond the checklist, but it's, you know, we'll try to answer.
You want to ask your question? Ask
Oh,
Reed your
I was
question?
just wondering if we had a policy where we rebid our services. I was just seeing the IT services and the different services on here, and I was just wondering how frequently we rebid those. If we had a protocol for, you know, doing that.
It depends on the service. For something like IT, the price has stayed the same every year since we actually hired those folks. So there's really no reason to rebid that. As far as banking services, we haven't done that for a while, but we intend to do that this year. We looked at rebidding that, I believe it was 5 years ago, we used PNC. And PNC immediately came back with much better terms. So there was no reason to rebid at that point.
But that's the good reason to have a
Correct.
scheduled rebidding, just
Correct.
to keep people on their toes.
So it does vary depending on what the service is.
So we don't really have a protocol, I just didn't know.
No, it varies. For example, for audit services, the Government Finance Officers Association says make it a 5-year contract. So you wouldn't be rebidding that every year, for example. So it does depend on the service, but no, we don't have any hard and fast rule as far as rebidding is concerned. We generally look at the price of the service provider. If it goes up by more than what we think is a reasonable amount, like the inflation rate, then we are going to look at rebidding that service.
Yeah, that's the case with, the fees for engineering are looked at carefully every year, and, you know, if we were to have an exorbitant increase and the engineering company would want to stand on that would be something we would want to consider looking. But, for example, with Gateway Engineers, there's again, unless they falter, and it behooves them not to, obviously, they have created a mapping system for us and so forth, so there's a lot of interrelationship there. It can be undone, but I think it has to have a pretty good reason, so it does vary by service.
Any other questions? Okay, then we'll move on to number 3. Notification that the vacancy on the McCandless Township Sanitary Authority created by the resignation of William C. Hunkley has been posted on the town website as per our appointment policy. Applications will be taken through August the 7th, 2017, to fill Mr. Hunkley's term of appointment, which expires December 31st, 2017. Any question on that? So whoever we would appoint, we need to stress the fact that that appointment would only go until just the end of December. And then we would have to go through all of that again. Okay, no further questions? Then I'll move on.
Just, excuse me
Oh,
one
I'm
second,
sorry.
I do have one question. Who makes that appointment? Is that a council appointment?
You.
Even though it's a separate?
You appoint the MTSA board.
Okay, thank you.
Everyone else okay? Okay, moving on to seminars and conferences. Allegheny League of Municipalities on July 24th will have a reception from 3:30 to 5 o'clock at Allegheny Country Club. If anyone is interested in going, please let Marie know. And also on August the 11th, we have the firefighters golf and/or dinner. The dinner's at 5 o'clock, and that's at Lakeview North. And also, you need to let Marie know.
That would be Melinda. Let Melinda.
Oh, Melinda, I'm sorry, yes.
Or Marie, that'd be fine.
Okay. Any other questions? Any comments from the audience? I guess I would call the audience.
Hi, I'm Debbie Sagan. I have a question from Parkmont Estates. On the capital, the check listing, the town all funds, number 18, for the capital improvement fund checking account, Fund 18, there was a check amount for $122,503.57. And I just wondered, is that broken down anywhere? Is that for the Heritage Center?
That's the total for that page. All
For
those-
which page?
all the whole page. That's the sum total checks. See where it says total checks to the left?
I'm talking about this
122,503.
page. No, go back.
On the
There's
very
no,
front.
it says 1 of 1 on the bottom.
Yeah. Capital Improvements Fund 18.
Yes. On this page, this little, it doesn't look like you're looking at the same
little short
type
one,
of
the
page
very
that I'm
first
looking
page,
at.
Debbie.
She's talking about the front top page here, Toby.
Yeah, 1 of 1, the very first page. Going down.
Yeah, that's a summary of each fund. That's the total. And then you go to the page in the back that has the detail.
Okay, which page in the back? What's the number of the page?
It's, across the top it says Fund 18. It would
Yeah,
be-
that's page 1 of 1.
It
Now,
would be
which
the
page
next to
do you
the,
go back
the second
to?
from the last
I think,
page.
let me say one thing real quick. I think one of the confusions here may be,
Yeah.
there are multiple page one of ones.
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
I just realized that.
In fact, there's at least 3 of
You're
them.
trying to show me.
You're talking about the check listing, accounting, capital improvements fund, Fund 18,
I see.
on the second
Okay.
from last page.
Got it. I
There's a
have
whole lot
that.
of
I
checks.
have your 1 of 1 now.
There's a whole lot of checks.
Yes,
Well,
there's-
it's one of one, because I think Regis set that up because that's one page for that fund. Each fund
Well,
is separate.
But it's the second from
I
last
see
page.
where it says the heading
It's not
before
hard to
1 of
find.
1
It's
as
not
well,
many
but I appreciate your pointing that out, so now I can figure that out. Thank
it?
you. Okay, got it.
Very good,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Then the Finance and Personnel Committee is adjourned.
Okay. I think that's it.
That's it.
Mr. Volz, thanks for